You ever get the feeling that some companies just have a secret formula for success? Well, I'm here to tell you it's not some secret handshake, it's a playbook. And today, we're going to tear out the most important pages and hand them right over to you.
I mean, just think about a company like Amazon. How in the world do they get so massive? How do they crush their competition seemingly on price every single time? It really does feel like some kind of corporate magic, doesn't it? But here's the thing, it's not magic at all. It's actually a pretty straightforward set of rules, a playbook, if you will. And once you see these core economic principles, I promise you'll start seeing them everywhere, from the corner coffee shop to the biggest tech giants on the planet.
So, no more messing around. Over the next 5 minutes, we're handing you that playbook. You ready? Let's dive in.
All right, first up, we got to start with the absolute bedrock of any business, right? Making a profit. But what does profit really mean? It's actually a little trickier than you'd think.
Look, everybody knows profit is just what you bring in minus what you spend. Revenue minus costs. Easy. But, and this is a big but, this is exactly where most people get it wrong. Because you see, there are two very different kinds of costs. And if you're only looking at one of them, you're basically flying blind.
Okay, let's make this super clear with an example. Meet Erin. She wants to start her own law firm. So she runs the numbers. She figures she can bring in about $200,000 in revenue. Her direct, out-of-pocket costs, rent for the office, paying a clerk, that's going to be $85 grand. So her accounting profit looks amazing, $115,000. She's thinking, I'm rich. But wait, there is a hidden cost. To start this firm, she has to quit her current job, which pays her $125,000 a year. That's her opportunity cost. And when you subtract that, whoa, her real economic profit is actually negative $10,000. She'd literally be paying to work at her own company.
And that, right there, is the huge difference. Accounting profit, that's just the simple money in, money out. But economic profit, that tells you the truth. It tells you if you're actually better off. So the takeaway here is massive but simple. You have to factor in what you're giving up, your opportunity cost. Okay, so we've got a handle on how to measure real profit. Now for the next big question. How do you actually, make the stuff you're going to sell? This is all about building the engine of your business, your production machine.
Now, the fancy economics term for this is the production function, but honestly, the best way to think about it is just like a recipe. Seriously. It's the exact formula your company uses to mix together your inputs, like your workers, your machines, your raw materials, to create the thing you sell.
Of course, in the real world, you can't just snap your fingers and get a bigger factory overnight. You're stuck with what you've got, at least for a little while. And that brings us to a super important concept for any business, dealing with the short run. And all that means is any period of time where at least one of your big inputs is totally fixed.
Let's check this out in action. Picture a small tree cutting business. They've got one big two-person saw. That saw, that's our fixed input. They can't just get another one today. But they can hire more lumberjacks. That's their variable input. And if you look here, you can see how the number of trees they cut changes as they add more workers. Just check out that first jump from 1 lumberjack to 2.
Wow, look at that. When that second lumberjack shows up, their output shoots up by 6 whole trees. Why? Well, the saw is literally designed for 2 people. Now they're working together, they're specializing. This is what we call increasing marginal product. It's awesome.
But what happens when you add a third lumberjack? Uh-oh. The total output only goes up by 2 trees. Now you've got 3 people trying to share one saw. They start bumping into each other, waiting around. The extra output you get from that new worker starts to get smaller and smaller. And what you're seeing right there is one of the most fundamental laws in all of economics. It's called the law of diminishing marginal product. It's this simple reality. In the short run, when one of your inputs is fixed, adding more and more of a variable input like workers will eventually give you less and less extra output for each new one you add. It's a universal rule. So think about what this means. If each new worker is producing less, well, that means the cost to produce each extra tree starts to go up, right? This forces you to change your thinking. You have to stop looking at total production and start focusing on the cost of each individual unit. It's time to win the per unit game.
There's a perfect analogy for this, and it's your GPA. Seriously, think about it. If your grade on your next test, your marginal grade, is lower than your overall average, what happens? It pulls your average down. But if you ace it and get a higher grade, it pulls the whole average up. Well, business costs work the exact same way. The cost of making just one more item, the marginal cost, is going to either pull your average cost down or drag it up. And this all boils down to the single most important question any manager has to answer when deciding how much stuff to make. It's this: is the cost of making one more item, that's my marginal cost, less than the money I can sell it for? If the answer is yes, you make it. If it's no, you stop. That's it. That's the decision.
But come on, no business wants to be stuck in the short run forever, right? The real goal is to get to the long run. That's the future where nothing is fixed, where you can change anything. This is where you get to think about the big picture: growth, expansion, and really scaling up. So in the long run, you can finally build that bigger factory. And just look at what happens. Let's say you're making alarm clocks. In a small factory, your average cost for each clock is $12. Okay, but if you build a medium factory, that cost drops to $8. And a big, efficient, large factory? Whoa, now your average cost is just $4 per clock.
This amazing concept has a name: economies of scale, and it's one of the most powerful forces in business. It's the simple but game-changing idea that as you make more and more stuff, your cost to make each individual thing goes down. Getting bigger makes you more efficient.
And boom, that brings us all the way back to Amazon. This right here is their secret weapon. They build these gigantic, super automated warehouses in places where land is cheap. That creates absolutely massive economies of scale. Their cost to process and ship an item is so much lower than a smaller competitor's, which means they can charge you less and still make money. It's not magic, it's the playbook in action.
So there you have it, the entrepreneur's playbook. Let's recap the 4 key plays you need to run. 1. Always know your true economic profit, not just the accounting profit. 2. Understand your short-run limits. That law of diminishing returns is real. 3. Make your day-to-day decisions by watching your marginal costs. And 4. Your long-term strategy is to scale up and drive those costs down. Look, this isn't just boring textbook theory. These are the fundamental rules of the game. And honestly, understanding them is what separates the businesses that win from the ones that don't even finish the first quarter. So we've given you the playbook. The question is, what are you going to build?